Welcome back, everyone, to another week 5 of the PBO for the Kalos Division. Of course, if you don't know what the PBO is, it is the Pokemon Battle Organization, a Pokemon Draft League on Pokemon Showdown. I'm, of course, a co-owner, Loho Plays, along with my other co-owner, Sonoran Flying. His YouTube is going to be in the description below. Again, we are going to be going over the week 5 games. I'm trying to get this out a little bit early so people can try their best to really try to play for these playoffs, because I think a lot of teams are still in it if they continue to win their matches. So it'll be really exciting to see someone come out from under and ultimately get back into playoffs, because the playoffs are a little bit cutthroat. If you're top seed in your division, you get a bye, which is extremely good, and it like really makes, I feel like in other leagues it really kind of undermines the value of being number one during the season, because that like bye week really helps. I mean, that's like guaranteed you're in semis, right? Which is, I think, is a really cool idea. So technically only 3 out of the 6 teams for each division are actually going on to playoffs. We'll talk about it at the end of the video of who's qualifying. I am trying to record these videos ahead, so I haven't seen the entirety of this week play out. But yeah, so it's going to look a little choppy throughout this video, but ultimately we are going to go over the games and then we're going to review the games. Of course, make sure to check out for timestamps for what you want to watch. Without further ado, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and let's get into it. Okay, game 1 is against Marble Falls and Toronto Staraptors. So I know this was a huge game for Toronto Staraptors, even though they still are definitely in this for playoffs. But Marble Falls is currently undefeated with 4-0. So Toronto Staraptors did hit me up and we were trying to team build. We actually spent like 3 hours trying to figure out you know, a game plan for this. So I do have a little bit more inside scoop of Toronto's perspective against Marble Falls, who is currently undefeated. So let's just go through the game first and see what happens, and then we will continue we'll go from, oh my god, yo, oh my Christ almighty. Poof. Okay, play without music, please. Oh, I'm so sorry for anyone that heard that. Okay, so turn 1, Dragapult gonna go for a Shadow Ball onto the Slowking Galarian. Actually just gonna straight up take it. 87%, that's definitely is specs damage. I mean, of course I know this because, you know, I helped make the team, but Slowking actually going for a Trick Room very early on is very powerful. We are going to see to switch into Oink Alone, while Slowking actually goes for a Chilly Reception. Pretty good move by Marble Falls there, because the Chilly Reception allows them to adapt. They would always be faster, and if Dragapult stays in, then you know Shadow Ball is coming next. And if someone switches, then you have switch initiative. So then we see Glacier come out, and it has sub Tera Ghost, and this Oink Alone goes for a Yawn, unfortunately. Glacier does set up a sub. We see Oricorio come out on the Icicle Crash, takes a clean 79%. Do have to be careful here as we see another back double into Oink Alone, immune to the Tera Blast. And then we see that the Trick Room finally goes away. We see another double into Lucario here to take the Icicle Crash. And then another double on the Dragapult as they miss an Icicle Crash. The Glacier actually missing an Icicle Crash. Pretty powerful. And then we see Quilladin coming in on the Shot Ball. It is immune because it is bulletproof. And then we're going to see a switch out into Oink Alone to take the Super Fang from the Quilladin. Then we're going to see a Protect come out from the Oink Alone, while Quilladin fails to go for a taunt. And then we see an additional taunt onto the Dragapult slot, meaning Dragapult will be able to go to for a Flamethrower and effectively get off really good damage on Quilladin, to be honest. And then we're going to see another Flamethrower come out onto the Slowking Galar, and it is going to be another 2-hit KO, and it gets a burn. So even with that Leech Seed damage, it's this next Flamethrower is actually still going to take it out. So we will see another double by the Galarian Slowking to go into Electros. Electros takes that decently well, 32%. That is Specs Pult, but also like it's not Stab. So we do see a switch into Gardevoir to trace the Levitate, as Eel actually goes for another sub, meaning there's 2 Mons with sub on Marble Falls teams. Gardevoir going for a Psychic here. Electros going for the Liquidation. And now we finally see a switch into Klefki as Gardevoir goes for another Psychic. It does really good damage at 39%. And then we see the Encore onto the Light Screen slot, meaning we should see a switch from Klefki here. Yeah, out into Slowking, while Lucario comes out. Lucario going for an Earthquake onto the Slowking, barely almost not taking that out. 55% is really close. Then we see a chilly reception on the Slowking. Glacier comes out on the Lucario. We see a switch into Gardevoir, pick up the Chilling Neigh, but of course it does fall to a Tera Blast. Glacier getting a +1 attack boost, as actually Dragapult comes out and goes for Draco Meteor, but unfortunately misses. And then we see another Draco Meteor, but it's another miss again. But Quilladin does go for a Super Fang here, which does fail. And then finally a Draco Meteor actually connects for Dragapult, meaning they only have 5 out of 8 left. We see Slowking Galar come out as Dragapult stays in for another Draco Meteor, almost taking it out, and Slowking actually going to go for another chilly reception, so very close to taking it out. If not Light Screen, it definitely would have taken it out. Now we do see Klefki come back out. We're going to see a switch back into Lucario as Klefki sets a Reflect, and then a switch into Glacier Tera Ghost to actually prevent the Brick Break from breaking the screens. And then we see Lucario actually go for a Tera Flying, try to get off a little bit of chip with Earthquake, but it really does not do anything with Glacier in the snow, giving it a 1.5 defense boost, as well as Glacier getting another 1.5 attack boost. Now we see Glacier actually switch out onto the Oricorio slot, while Oricorio actually goes for a Roost. And then the following turn we see another Roost from Oricorio, but then Electros actually goes for a Liquidation, and it actually does a really strong amount of damage, like 70 something percent. Yeah, 63 is really not bad. Of course they do have leftovers, so they are able to gain back a little bit of health. But then finally we do see a Coil on the Electros set, which is very deadly. Toedscruel coming out, wants to go for a Spore, but because of its Mycelium Might, it's actually slower than when Electros goes for Substitute. So Spore, unfortunately, they were unable to Spore the Electros. They switch in Dragapult on the Liquidation, they take resisted damage, and now they are able to go through the sub. But of course, they miss another Draco Meteor, which is very unfortunate. And Electros actually goes for Gastro Acid, which prevents the Infiltrator from going through the Substitute. Dragapult stays in to go for another Draco Meteor, but of course it's only going to break the sub, while Dragapult does take a Liquidation. So it looks like you see the whole moveset of only Liquidation is Electros's final move. We do see another sub from Electros here. Oinkologne comes out, is going to protect as the Electros goes for a Coil. Let's see. Oinkologne actually showing stockpile, setup defense, and SpDef boost, but it's seriously not enough compared to Electros, because this body press is not going to be doing enough to actually break the sub, while Electros is doing 20% with Liquidation, and this Oinkologne has no way of gaining back HP. So we are going to see the Electros take out the Oinkologne, meaning Toedscruel will be coming right back out. Trying to get a knockoff is really important to knock out this thing's leftovers, so it isn't getting any more residual recovery over time. It does set up another Substitute, but Toedscruel can do some okay damage, at least KO the Substitute in 2 turns with Giga Drain. Their main goal is to try to prevent this Electros sweep as fast as possible. Now that Electros is at so little HP, they decide to double out of their Toedscruel into Oricorio, but unfortunately do take a Liquidation to take that thing out. And then Dragapult is going to come right back in and try to fire off the Draco Meteor, which does kill Electros. And then finally we're going to see Klefki come out, because of course they understand that Dragapult is specs at this point, meaning Klefki can go safely for a Trick Room, meaning that they're following Mons, either Slowking Galar or Glacier can basically finish this out as long as Trick Room is up. We do see a Spore on Toedscruel, but it unfortunately does not play in any effect, and then Glacier does come out on the knockoff. Takes a little bit of damage, but ultimately Glacier in Trick Room will effectively take out Toedscruel and Dragapult with the Icicle Crash in these final 2 turns. Now, I guess Icicle Crash and Tera Blast makes a lot of sense. Now, I will go into the review of this battle. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot I had this little Psyduck guy going this entire time. LOL. So basically, yeah, I have a review. I have a insider depth, more in depth for Toronto's perspective of how this game went wrong comparatively to Marble Falls. I think Marble Falls did make a slight few mistakes, but ultimately, yeah, they ended up winning, so they're gonna ultimately have less critiques on them. So to give you guys a breakdown of what these sets are, Dragapult is Specs, U-Turn, Flamethrower, Draco, and Shadow Ball. Oricorio is actually Quiver Dance, Revolution Dance, Roost, and Taunt. Lucario hits everything. I think it was Stone Edge instead of a Dark move for Glacier. We really were not predicting Tera Ghost here, so we didn't really actually have any coverage move for Lucario to hit Tera Ghost Glacier. I think I was pretty adamant on saying that Glacier would more likely be Tera Electric. So it's definitely my bad on my part. Hold on, let me turn this down slight. There we go. Yeah, so it was definitely like my bad on. I definitely was like influenced Toronto to only predict the electric, but of course Tera Ghost was actually really powerful, and we should have thought about that a little bit more. But yeah, and then Gardevoir is actually Destiny Bond, Psychic, Mystical Fire, and Encore. Toedscruel is Spore, Rapid Spin, Giga Drain, and I think Spikes. And then Oinkologne is Yawn, Protect, Body Slam, and I kind of forget the final move. Oh yeah, Stockpile. So let's go through this match. Lead Dragapult into Slowking is really fine. Even the Shadow Ball is decent because it gets off a heavy chunk on Slowking. Yeah, as long as the Slowking knows that it doesn't die to Specs, this is a fine move to just straight up go for the Trick Room. And then the Chilly Reception is actually a really good play because, of course, now you know that Dragapult, excuse you, is Specs. You can appropriately switch around that. We do see Glacier come in. I will say turn 4 immediately. Since we're trying to stall out Trick Room turns here, the main point of Oinkologne having Protect here is that it can protect away the Trick Room turns. As like that is, you know, Glacier is very, very slow. The most important thing is trying to get rid of the Trick Room turns. So sub was very unexpected on Glacier. I do like the Yawn play, honestly. I don't think it was bad, but also Protect here would have been nice just to reduce the Trick Room turns. But even here now, definitely Protect is extremely useful because you reduce the Trick Room turns down to 1. Even if they were to Swords Dance, at least you take a turn of getting rid of Trick Room. Also, they didn't even seem to show Swords Dance throughout this match. It was like, what, Tera Ghost, Icicle Crash, and maybe like Wild Charge is the final. But yeah. I think this hard switch in Oricorio is a little bit rough because you're taking so much damage from Icicle Crash. I know that you were probably predicting a close combat, but again, protecting is way better to at least get rid of one more turn of Trick Room, and then definitely turn 4 you are picking a sack, but more than likely either Oinkologne could honestly be a sack because Oinkologne's main purpose here was to take on Glacier. It could have some outside purpose in potentially taking on Ursaluna, but honestly the main point of Oinkologne being here was to have the Thick Fat to take on Glacier. So yeah, Oricorio taking a lot of damage here definitely sucks, especially since Trick Room is up. You're gonna have to switch again. Yeah, Oinkologne is definitely a fine switch in because I feel like out of all your mons you definitely want to sack it, but I would have liked Oricorio to have more health and rather Oinkologne just be sacked to just get rid of the Trick Room, because again, like, they're still not showing Swords Dance here. Of course it's still early on, you might not know, but again, like, they're not showing Swords Dance at all. It seems like they might not have it. Switching to Lucario to take the Icicle Crash is also okay, but again, we do have to sack something and ultimately to get in Dragapult later on. But we do see that an aggressive switch from Lucario into Dragapult, maybe predicting another close combat. But honestly, if they weren't going for close combat on Oinkologne, more than likely they don't have it. Especially after they have a sub up, they really don't have to play super aggressive of like trying to catch you switch because they basically have a free sub up. I definitely think this Dragapult switch in was a little bit too aggressive because obviously this Icicle Crash missed, and I think honestly if this landed it might have been GG, but of course we do have Gardevoir in the back as well, so potentially like if you're really scared about Glacier, you could go hard into Gardevoir. You take at least one Icicle Crash, and then they think that you can't go through the substitute, and you actually have Destiny Bond. Just to simply take out Glacier and say, okay, you know what, my trade for Gardevoir for Glacier, especially since this Glacier showing Tera Ghost like was really unexpected for us and we were really unprepared for it, basically means that, you know, maybe Gardevoir is a good trade to just go for Destiny Bond. You will outspeed because Glacier is super slow specifically for Trick Room, so uninvested Gardevoir will outspeed uninvested Glacier, and then you could trade it that way. But yeah, also a very lucky bad miss for Marble Falls, because I think with that Icicle Crash it would have been not over for sure, but definitely close. Quilladin coming on the Shadow Ball, really good use of utilizing Quilladin's bulletproof ability. Doubling back into Oinkologne, not a bad play, just scouting to see what Quilladin can do. I think this also would have been a decent opportunity to go Toedscruel as well. Even though you take the Super Fang, you can knock off the following turn to at least get off the Eviolite of Quilladin. That can be extremely useful. Even if they taunt you the following turn, it's like we had kind of made some predictions in that, you know, Quilladin might bring spikes, so we want to definitely have Rapid Spin. It's not a win-win for Toedscruel, because effectively they are taking Super Fangs, but honestly, like, Quilladin doesn't have anything outside of Super Fang to really kill Toedscruel. So you could also just knock off strictly to get off a knockoff or knock off on anything. Yeah, even going like Glacier isn't free, Slowking isn't free, and just knocking off an item is really useful. So yeah, yeah, all this is fine. Good aggressive switch in for the Dragapult on the taunt. Leech Seed going up isn't bad either. This, I was actually surprised that Flamethrower was this close to killing. Yeah, I don't know if there was a better play of like switching out here, because like Dragapult's definitely very threatening against the other team, so I don't think it was a bad play. I think here though, realizing that Slowking is super like gonna die to the next Flamethrower, I think you could potentially have switched there, understanding that, you know, they don't want to go Glacier, they don't want to go Quilladin, they're definitely not going Klefki, so more than likely Eel or Ursaluna are coming out, so potentially you could have gone Toedscruel immediately on this, because also you don't take the Leech Seed damage, but this is also still fine. Yeah, to catch that switch of the Slowking Galar is hard, but also like it's extremely good, because you definitely know that they want to keep their Slowking alive, because they have Chilly Reception, which basically gives them a free switch into Glacier. This thing also has Regenerator. But yeah, this is still fine. This is going decent. Then we see Gardevoir switch in, traces the Levitate on Electros. This is also like one of the biggest misplays, I think, for Toronto's side, is that Electros is obviously, based off the Flamethrower damage, is obviously showing some kind of defensive set. We're definitely not max speed, but we definitely outspeed. I think we sped crept specifically for Gardevoir to outspeed max speed Electros. I'm not 100% sure. But ultimately, we were fine with Electros just being extremely slow. As well as we'll see like this following turn that you did outseed with a Psychic, meaning that we had Encore for the Gardevoir, meaning that you could have Encored it into sub, meaning Gardevoir can just freely Psychic whatever comes in, most likely Klefki, but ultimately you take less damage on your Gardevoir is still at full health, and this thing is less of a problem. And then we see Klefki coming on the Psychic. We talked about this turn of Klefki, whenever it comes in, it's definitely going to want to go for screen. So you Encore it the first turn, and then you're definitely forcing a switch. So you can either double here or just strictly go for another Psychic. They decided to go for the double into Lucario. It's definitely not a bad play, because they do catch the Slowking. Close Earthquake roll to almost kill the Slowking, to be honest. Very close. But of course, we are going to see the Chilly Reception into the Glacier. I think, again, as soon as Glacier comes in, low-key, you're kind of picking a sack. They only have Light Screen up right now, which is totally fine, but they do have Snow for their defense. To be honest, Lucario could be kind of a waste here, because Slowking is so low HP. Lucario could be decent for Ursaluna and potentially Klefki, like for Earthquake. Honestly, like, if you want to sack this thing or you want to sack Oinkologne, both of these are good sacks. I do not think that sacking Gardevoir is great here, because even though you're more than likely, I don't know if you're still trying to predict a close combat, or maybe it's just like Terra Ghost or whatever, or Earthquake, Gardevoir is way too valuable to sack here comparatively to Lucario or Oinkologne that are kind of walled against Glacier, Klefki with Reflect Up. I think Lucario is nice to Brick Break away the Reflects, but ultimately you still have Dragapult in the back with Infiltrator that can still go through Reflects. And you know, if also like you go straight into Oinkologne and then take a couple turns to just protect to waste out the light screens too. That could be a really good play. And then sack it like after the first couple of turns. I definitely think letting Gardevoir here was a bit rough. Just because like psychic damage plus mystical fire once the Klefki is gone. I mean, Klefki took like 35 from the last psychic or something like that. Like if mystical fire does even more, and then once light screen is gone, like psychic is extremely free to spam here. Yeah, and then the following 2 turns, missing this Draco as well as missing the falling Draco is really bad for Toronto Staraptors, as like by the end of the game they seriously only have like 1 Draco Meteor left. So all these misses, like, they seem like they're nothing because they eventually do get the kill on, I can't believe I just did that. They do eventually get the kill on the Quilladin, but like honestly having that little amount of Draco Meteors puts a lot of pressure on you to basically not click it as much against the Klefki. So it's very scary in that regard. Also, Dragapult going for a U-turn here is pretty nice because obviously Marble Falls does not want their Glacier to die when it can do so much work. But again, like, these Draco Meteor misses really sucked in terms of like the amount of PP that you have left for Draco Meteor in the end, because they wasted 3 Draco Meteors simply just to kill this Quilladin. Definitely sucks. Slowking come out. I think also potentially switching here would have been fine, but also Draco Meteor is good because it gets off enough chip where like Slowking can't like honestly switch into anything in the future, so I don't mind this play. But let's see, Klefki comes back out obviously because your specs. There should be Reflect or Light Screen for Klefki. This is pretty free. Good prediction on Marble Falls to catch the Brick Break on the Lucario turn. Yeah, potentially Earthquake. I mean, it's really hard to predict though, because you have really like not strong moves for Glacier. Yeah, again, this is totally fine to sack the Lucario here. It's definitely the least valuable. And then you just like go right back out into sorry, this following turn. After you get this little bit of chip on Glacier, your play is definitely to go Dragapult because you can go through the Reflect. I mean, again, that's really nothing, like, that really doesn't matter too much, because look at their switch-ins for, like, Mystical Fire. So I know Oricorio came out here, which is fine, like, I think that works too. But, like, you can kind of go Dragapult and threaten Shadow Ball because Quilladin's gone, or you can just simply threaten another Draco, or predict Klefki to come in and go for a Mystical Fire. It turns into, like, a little bit of a 50-50. But Oricorio is fine, just force a switch, and then we do get a Roost off. All this is fine. But this following turn, considering that you have seen Electros go for Liquidation again, it's definitely better to switch out into your Toedscruel to try to 1v1 this. Because that Liquidation, I mean, you gain back to a little bit of HP, but it's definitely not worth it since you're, like, you know, basically already at like 70-something%. Toedscruel, again, this was a slight misplay for the Mycelium Might ability. Definitely understanding like this ability will cause you to go last. They already showed Substitute before, meaning the best play was always to knock off here. You would outspeed and then you take out the leftovers, and then pretty sure Toedscruel can comfortably 1v1 Electros. Not like 1v1, but like when it's only got 1.5 speed boost, you can at least get off a couple Giga Drains, but this leftovers is actually not that useful. Switching to Dragapult is okay because obviously they showed Liquidation before. See, again, Draco Meteor missing there sucks. Only having 3 left is terrible. Gastro Acid, pretty cool by Electros, but also, like, again, Dragapult should just switch here instead of trying to go for a Draco Meteor just to break the sub. Again, like, all they have left is Liquidation for you, but still, like, it's probably better that you just go out into Toedscruel and try to do some damage, or potentially, like, I mean, definitely can't go Oricorio, but potentially just go Toedscruel to reset your stats and then try to come back into Dragapult later after you, like, you know, Giga Drain, chip. I don't know though, you most likely have to sack something. I think what Oinkalone ends up being the sack before Dragapult can come back in again. I think it looks like Toedscruel and Oinkalone were the ones that had to be sacked in order for no, sorry. Oinkalone and Oricorio were the ones that had to be sacked. I don't think taunt goes through sub. Maybe it does for Oricorio, but that could have potentially been like an okay way of dealing with this too. I'm not too sure though. But yeah, those are some of the main misplays. Knockoff. Yeah, I already talked about basically all this. Turn 46, instead of going for Spore here, which Klefki is not really that much of a threat just sitting in here, instead of going for Spore here, the better play definitely would have been to go for a knockoff in case you do catch Glacier coming in or Slowking. You at least get some damage off. And also, like, a badass move here that Toronto could have gone for is actually on this chillier section. Because of like Trick Room, Slowking will always go first. Toadscruel going for Spore, it will still always show like Toadscruel growing last, and then you Spore the Glacier would have actually been fire. Because then you fall asleep the Glacier, you probably knock off again just to get off this little bit of chip, and then you go back into Dragapult and potentially just like try spamming Flamethrower because Slowking is pretty weak. And then all you have to do is deal with Ursaluna. Of course, you need to land a Draco Meteor on Ursaluna, but potentially on like the turns that you need to land that, you could probably sack Toadscruel and then try to get. But then you're locked into Draco and your specs. It could probably sucks. But anyway, I thought Sporing here would have been a dope ass play. But overall, just a couple of misplays. Actually, a closer game than you might think, because there was a lot of tech that Toronto could have utilized. Especially, I wish Destiny Bond Gardevoir would have pulled through. Excuse me. Because that was definitely a very strong way of getting Glacier, which is like one of the biggest threats on Marble Falls teams. But of course, it's totally fine. Totally understandable. As well as I think the timer was definitely rushing them down a bit. So definitely getting used to timer is something that a lot of people will gradually, you know, get better at. So, but yeah, that was definitely this match. Again, like none of this critique was meant to be personal. Strictly just to try to help Toronto, because I think they still, I mean, they're in playoffs right now and they still have really good standings to be in playoffs in the future. So yeah, that is going to be game number 1, and let's go on to the next game. All right, next match we have the Pittsburgh Scizors with the team roster in the top right versus Santa Cruz Swadloons with the team roster in the bottom right. So we see that Pittsburgh Scizors decided to bring Slitherwing, Goodra, Sylveon, Iron Treads, Serena, Salazzle, while Santa Cruz Swadloons decided to bring Goldingo, Rotom, Meowscarada, Tinglu, Tauros Paldea, and Fletchinder, right? Yeah, Fletchinder. So let's get into the battle, and then of course we will do the reviews of the match. So we see a lead of Paldea, Tauros, Aqua against Salazzle. Immediately Salazzle getting off a Will-O-Wisp, but it actually doesn't matter because Raging Bull does even 75% to it off the rip. So after Sludge Bomb does not take out the Tauros, Tauros will take out Salazzle with another Raging Bull. Getting a little bit of leftovers chip to counteract that burn damage, but it doesn't matter because Iron Treads comes in here and goes for an Earthquake. We do see Rotom going for a trick on the Iron Treads immediately, giving it a Choice Scarf in exchange for Assault Vest, but Iron Treads actually goes for a knockoff and immediately kills Rotom. Tinglu does come out next to take on the Iron Treads. Of course, it is locked in a knockoff, so Tinglu goes for her spikes as Slitherwing is switched in. On Slitherwing, Fletchinder decides to come back out as Slitherwing actually goes for a Flame Charge to get a +1 speed boost. Then we see a double back out into Sylveon as Fletchinder decided to go for a Will-O-Wisp. Following that, Fletchinder will go for a U-turn and switch into Goldingo as Sylveon, I kind of forget this turn, goes for a Calm Mind. We will now see Goldingo go for a Make It Rain as Goodra is switched in. Looks like to be a more specially defensive variant, doing 35%, still a lot though. We are going to see a double from Goldingo back out into Tinglu as Goodra goes for a Flamethrower. Goodra does get switched out into Serena as Tinglu goes for another Spike. And then a very aggressive offensive switch for Santa Cruz Swadloons to actually go into Goldingo to prevent the Rapid Spin on the Serena. Goldingo then goes for a Shadow Ball, which does 61%. Even through the Citrus, it can still kill Serena. So even though the Power Whip didn't land, it will still only do about 27%. Sylveon then decides to come in on the Shadow Ball. Does not take 2, however, so Sylveon is going to be the sack. Following that, we are going to see Slitherwing come out and obviously threaten Goldingo with perhaps a Flame Charge. But we do actually see a Wild Charge come out on the Fletchinder switch in and actually OHKOs in 1. While Goldingo actually doubles back out, potentially just absolutely just baiting that, just predicting that Slitherwing is most likely banded, or yeah, most likely banded. So able to predict that as they go for another Make It Rain to take out the Goodra. Well, not in this hit, but the following turn they will take it out. Goldingo is at -2 now, so this does basically give Pittsburgh Scizors the opportunity to deal heavy damage. We see Iron Treads come out, which of course is still Scarfed. We see a double into Tinglu as Treads actually predicts and goes for Rapid Spin to get rid of some of those spikes. We see another double into Serena as Tinglu is persistent to get up those spikes. Then another double into Goldingo. Still takes a Power Whip pretty well, 24%. Obviously takes out Serena with a Shadow Ball the following turn. So now we see Iron Treads again. It is going to be Scarf, so we know that it's going to be Scarf. So if it's locked in, it is going to lock itself into Earthquake. Only doing 25% to Tinglu is really no damage at all. Tinglu also continuing to set up spikes to do a little bit more chip when Slitherwing comes out. And then finally fires off an Earthquake to do 68% to Iron Treads. Iron Treads at only 4 HP left, Meowscarada will come out and go for a Sucker Punch to prevent any type of additional damage that Iron Treads potentially could have gotten off. And then Slitherwing is going to come out, but it has not showed first impression this whole game, so Meowscarada can successfully stay in, Tera Dark, and go for a knockoff to take out Slitherwing, and that is going to be a 2-0 victory for the Santa Cruz Swadloons. Alright, I am going to go through a review of this match. Feel free to skip if you'd like. So I have little notes for this one. All of this is fine early on. I do think that this trick for Rotom was basically essential for winning this match, but also in some ways, like, you lost your entire Rotom to trick away a Choice Scarf on a Treads, and the knockoff just killing Rotom here is definitely a bit sad. But also it kind of makes you think that potentially he only needed like 4 Pokemon to win, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, again, the Slitherwing on the Tinglu going for spikes. If Pittsburgh Scizors did have U-turn here, which I think they had, what, Flame Charge, Wild Charge, they definitely should have U-turn more than likely, especially if they're banded. U-turn is definitely a bit more free here, although Fletchinder does have Flame Body. You could also, instead of running Band, I think a cool one would have been Protective Pads, I think, because then there's no way they get hit with a Flame Body proc. Because U-turn is really free here. Of course, you do have to be careful of the Flame Body Fletchinder, but of course, like, even then, like, you went for the Flame Charge, you're still technically, like, you know, risking it there anyway. So U-turn is definitely a better option if you had it. Turn 10, when Goldingo is actually -1 special attack on the Goodra, specifically for Pittsburgh Scizors here, since the Goldingo is doing no damage to you with Make It Rain, unless they were Nasty Plot, which I think they would have gone for before you switching in, more than likely they have to switch here because of how little damage they're doing to you. So I think predicting here with either an Ice Beam, if you have it, would have been really powerful. Let's see. Turn 13 was a really good play for the Santa Cruz Swadloons to prevent this spin. I really like it because also they outspeed this Serena and kill it with 2 Shadow Balls, as well as Serena really can't do any damage to Goldingo with its particular moveset. Turn 16 was a very good prediction for Pittsburgh Scizors to kill the Fletchinder with the Wild Charge. I do believe that turn 18, instead of going for Make It Rain here with Goldingo, I'm not exactly 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure after the spikes damage, 2 Shadow Balls should be able to kill Goodra, and as well as like going for the Steel move, potentially Treads could have came out, and Shadow Ball is just better for all these options. So Shadow Ball is definitely a better play here. But overall, I think that's pretty much it. I would just say, like, for Pittsburgh Scizors, they really needed to do some more predictions, I think, on their part, or predicting some switches, because Santa Cruz did switch a lot, as well as knowing that like Goodra can take on Goldingo a little bit, but you have to find other ways of offensively checking it. Like Treads can at least take one, I would assume. And then if Tinglu is always going to be an answer for Treads, then you know that you should double into Slitherwing and try to get off. Like if Slitherwing doesn't have U-turn for this match, it definitely needed to, because Tinglu is definitely an offensive threat, and you can easily switch into it and then threaten it out with a U-turn, and it gives you some switch initiative. So I think a lack of prediction, as well as trying to get some switch initiative on the Santa Cruz Swadloons, was really important here. Yeah, overall, still a pretty good match, pretty close one too. Just Goldingo, I think this was Specs, was definitely a threat, because it was doing a lot of damage to Goodra, I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this match. Sorry if there wasn't too many pointers here, but overall, like, I think just Slitherwing not having U-turn, if it didn't, or the lack of going for it, was a bit brutal, as well as a lack of predictions for the Pittsburgh Scizors really brought them down. Like, I think you could even make use somewhat of the Choice Scarf once like Flesh and Dirt was gone. I think aggressively going Goldingo on Make It Rain or Shadow Ball could have been a little bit stronger. Of course, like Tinglu comes out, but then again, you should double into Slitherwing to threaten that out. As well as First Impression wouldn't have bad here, at least for Meowscarada. Maybe not so much for Goldingo, but yeah. Anyway, that is going to be this match. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, next up for battles, we have the Los Angeles Pelippers in the top right with the following roster against the Mojave Cacturnes with the roster in the bottom right. So the Los Angeles Pelippers decided to bring the Cinderace, Scyther, Berserker, Torkoal, Walking Wake, and Grimmsnarl, while the Mojave Cacturnes decided to bring Dachshund, Zoroark, Cresselia, Whiscash, Amoonguss, and Magneton. So let's get into the battle. We first see a lead on Whiscash into the lead Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl goes for a taunt, but because of Oblivious ability, Whiscash actually can't be taunted, meaning it gets Stealth Rock up and then gets up an additional spike as Grimmsnarl gets up a spike. Grimmsnarl then the following turn goes for a Parting Shot, while Whiscash goes, I believe, for an additional spike here. Yeah, doing like, that's a lot of hazards on the Los Angeles Pelippers side. But the Los Angeles Pelippers hitting back with Cinderace actually carrying Trailblaze specifically for Whiscash, actually one-shots it. That's actually insane. We see a switch into Amoonguss, and we see a double into Berserker. But I think more than likely this is not an Amoonguss, but in fact Hyper Voice, Zoroark doing some decent chip to Berserker. Follows that up with a Will-O-Wisp to weaken the Berserker. Berserker going for a crunch does 72%. That's still some heavy damage. Of course, the illusion is wore off, and Zoroark goes for another U-turn as they actually go into their real Amoonguss. Going for an Iron Head for the Berserker doesn't do too much. Then we see another double into Magneton on another Iron Head, does not do any damage either. And then we see a switch into Torkoal, which actually is going to take heavy damage from all the hazards. And then, of course, a Volt Switch coming out is going to bring it even lower. Torkoal only having 3% out. And then again, Zoroark coming out to pick out Torkoal as fodder, basically. Grimmsnarl comes right back out trying to set up Light Screen and Reflect. Magneton is the switch in on the Reflect, but in fact, while Grimmsnarl goes for a Parting Shot into Scyther, Magneton actually showing Rain Dance to get rid of the sun, so there's no more sun for the Los Angeles Pelippers team. And we see Scyther Tera bugging, while Magneton Tera Electric to make sure that it can live this falling close combat, which it does. And then Magneton takes it out with a Thunder. Wait, it doesn't take it out in the Thunder? Oh, Light Screen. My bad. But Thunder and the Rain is still dope. We see a Pounce from the Scyther. Still does not kill, as... Yo, I hate myself. Did I ever say that? Because I hate clicking reset on accident. We do see after the Pounce from the Scyther that Magneton takes out Scyther with a Gyro Ball, in fact. The following turn, Walking Wake, gonna try to utilize this this rain as much as it can. Goes actually hard into Dachshund, predicting that the Los Angeles Pelippers will go for a Dragon type move to catch the Amoonguss, and they do. So Donphan is able to safely force out Walking Wake as Berserker comes in, almost dying to Stealth Rock and Spikes here. And Donphan goes for Protect to actually allow Berserker to die to burn. Meaning this Donphan will still be alive. Incinerate comes out, still taking a ton from hazards. Does have Gunk Shot available, so it is going to take out Donphan in one hit. But of course, we are going to see Zoro Kasui come back out to threaten and kill the Cinderace with a Hyper Voice. Then we see Grimmsnarl come in, again taking lots from hazards, but does set up Light Screen as Zoro Kasui goes for a U-turn. Cresselia coming in to threaten Trick Room, but the Grimmsnarl does have Taunt, and it can't go for Trick Room. Moonblast to kill the Grimmsnarl and 2 as Grimmsnarl decides to go for another Taunt. Obviously does not want a Parting Shot and take a lot of damage on their Walking Wake. And the following Moonblast will kill the Grimmsnarl. And then we see that the Taunt ends. Perfect timing because we don't want Walking Wake to do this, which is what it did last week. Set up an Agility to predict the Moonblast so it can activate its weakness policy. This Trick Room is actually super essential to essentially keep the balance of the game. Because if you Moonblast here, I think you might be able to live one of Dragon Pulse. I assume Cresselia could live one. But more than likely, it would have been GG next game for the Walking Wake. But of course, because of this excellent Trick Room turn, that means that 2 Moonblasts, even after the special attack boost, will be able to take it out. It looks like the Trick Room didn't really matter, right? Because as long as they lived 1 Hydro Steam. But that is going to be a 4-0 victory for the Mojave Cacturnes. And a unfortunate loss for the Los Angeles Pelippers. And again, I am going to be going over through the review of this match, so feel free to skip if you'd like. Okay, so turn 1, honestly, I didn't even realize that Oblivious prevented Taunt, but I do like Taunt on Grimmsnarl because it does prevent hazards. Like a lot of these mons that would like to go for Trick Room or Donphan, Wish Protecting, Taunt is really cool and really effective. But I also just love how Wishcash was essentially able to get up Stealth Rock and 2 layers of spikes. Okay, my game is glitching because it's not showing the 2 layers of spikes before it went down, which is actually huge, as well as the Zoro Kasui to potentially kill the Cinderace with Court Change, but it actually didn't end up having Court Change. But yeah, excellent coverage for the Cinderace to actually bring Trailblade. Really unique, but actually worked well against the Wishcash. I do think instead of Hyper Voice here for the Zoro Kasui, I think Shadow Ball would have been a lot better, because even if the Los Angeles Pelippers decide to go for Grimmsnarl here, the following turn you can at least get some chip off with Hyper Voice or U-turn, versus like this is just like a very unique scenario where Berserker actually can take resisted Hyper Voice decently well. But of course, these hazards are working really, really well for you. And I think if you went for Shadow Ball here, I think it may would have been close to a 2-hit KO. I think staying in here on the burn is okay. If you miss Whisk, that would have sucked, but ultimately that's okay. This did end up working out for you, and of course I love the U-turn instead of going for Shadow Ball and then actually bringing out your real Amoonguss is pretty powerful here. And Amoonguss can definitely 1v1 this. I do like the double, predicting the double on potential double on the Berserker's side. But either way, this still works out because you will outspeed it the following turn with MAGNETON. Now here, I think is the biggest misplay that the Los Angeles Pelippers did. Hard switching from Berserker onto MAGNETON is like really it's not good, because you already have Stealth Rocks and Spikes, like 2 layers of spikes on your side of the field. I assume Torkoal is Rapid Spin, because like without Rapid Spin, I mean this game obviously shows like Slitherwing, or sorry, not Slitherwing, Scyther not being heavy duty boots, like Torkoal not being heavy duty boots. I don't even think Cinderace is also heavy duty boots. Like you can see that like hazards up, like Wishcash was able to get off a lot of hazards, and you'll see that throughout this game, switching becomes a lot harder, because like I think throughout this game, everything is taking at least 30% from hazards or more as this game continues, which is really rough. And I think you definitely want to make sure that your Torkoal is healthy to get off at least one rapid spin, because now the wish cache is gone. They can't set up hazards again. You just have to find a free opportunity on maybe Cresselia or something a little bit slower like a Moongus to just come in, and or even Donphan, because even if Donphan tried to switch in on you with the Lava Plume, like you would want to just rapid spin anyway just to prevent that. And of course Zoroark is a very good rapid spin blocker, so you'd have to predict that too. But again, I think in one hindsight, you were thinking more than likely, you know, I can bring in Torkoal, get up the sun, it's going to be really powerful for me, and then basically sacking it, in turn I get a free switch in. But I also think that what's more important is that Stealth Rock and Spike, getting rid of those first before trying to go with your sun game plan, is I think is a lot better option, because, you know, the worst case scenario is you take a Volt Switch, right, on Torkoal, or maybe like there's some other like weird setup move. But even then, this MAGNETON could have been Tera Ground, which hit Berserker and Torkoal for super effective damage. So it would have died anyway. But yeah, MAGNETON coming out, not MAGNETON, Zoroark, killing the Torkoal. I was gonna say the most fire tech, I think, Rain Dance really worked for Mojave Cacturnes, because I think I mentioned it last week. One of the major misplays for Los Angeles Pelippers is they sacked the Torkoal too early, and this is just like perfect case scenario where, like, if it was way early, if Torkoal was still alive, this Rain Dance would be very useless. But because it's gone now, this Rain Dance is actually super important to just preventing like any of this you know, weather shenanigans, basically. I also think potentially going hard Wake here, you know, parting shot into Wake might be better than Scyther, because you know, you're taking a lot of damage with Berserker, and of course, like, you might be taking a lot from Volt Switch or Thunderbolt. At least it's like neutral damage, as well as like if you're worried of Grinstar going for a Flash Cannon, then you still have Walking Wake, which, like, you know, resists that. I think that just could have been another potential option for the Los Angeles Pelippers here, but of course this Rain Dance is heat. And then, yeah, actually showing the Tera Electric, which actually works really well for MAGNETON this week, because I think the only major ground type that the Los Angeles Pelippers has is the Crookerook, and obviously if it doesn't come, you can just easily spam electric type moves. And yeah, Thunder, I cannot believe that did not kill a Scyther. It is obviously Eviolite, light screen up, even though -1 special defense. But I do think a misplay for Mojave Cacturnes. I don't know why MAGNETON is running Gyro Ball. I know you were cooking this week, but there is no reason for MAGNETON to like ever run Gyro Ball. Because, like, even if you're like min speed, MAGNETON does not do enough damage for Gyro Ball. You're much better off just running Flash Cannon. Kind of a weird tech. I think always Flash Cannon is better there, but I did think that this was a good opportunity for the Los Angeles Pelippers to bring out Walking Wake, because rain is up. And I think what an excellent switch in for Mojave Cacturnes to predict the Dragon type move, because Amoonguss is still alive, right? Which makes a lot of sense. And it looks like Wake did not want to stay in there for the play rough, because more than likely without screens up, this thing could have killed them. But yeah, I'm not too entirely sure about that. This protect is really good for Donphan, obviously, because it allows Berserker die and waste a turn of light screen. To be honest, you could protect. Oh no, you protected the previous turn. Yeah, good kill by Cinderace. I mean, you could have... I don't even think there's a way to scout for that. Maybe go Crest, but you're probably still taking a lot. Yeah, Hyper Voice killing here. And then I'm pretty sure this is it. But I think this endgame of, like, Trick Room definitely puts you in a position to win. I think the 2 Moonblasts would have killed anyway. But I think Trick Room really helps you out in case, like, something does go wrong. You Moonblast this and it has weakness policy and it has some way of like killing you actually, then you have a lot of backups with under Trick Room that can win this 1v1. But yeah, that is going to be the review of the game. Major misplay for the Los Angeles Pelippers, I would say, is definitely letting like too many hazards come up and then unfortunately sacking the Torkoal and then having no way of removing the hazards, because the hazards were brutal this game. So yeah, without further ado, let's go into the next match. Alright, for the next match, we have the Sonoran Pikachus with the team roster in the top right. They decided to bring Electro, Hisui, Decidueye, Tauros, Paldea, Blaze, Cerulege, Enamorus, and Dunsparce against the Las Vegas Corviknights with the team roster in the bottom right. They decided to bring Arboliva, Lokix, Iron Valiant, Typhlosion, Hisui, Quaquaval, and Vespiquen. Let's get right into the battle. We will see a Lokix lead into the Tauros, Paldea, Blaze lead with the Intimidate, which is actually a pretty good just overall lead against Tauros, Paldea, Blaze. We are going to see a switch into Quaquaval as Tauros, Paldea, Blaze decides to go for a bulk up. Good scout for Lokix to make sure that wasn't Scarf, or at least that it wasn't faster than Lokix, because it would kill it with the Raging Bull. We do see Quaquaval does take the Trailblaze. Does at least a decent amount of damage, especially with a bulk up though. And then Wave Crash doing a hefty amount with 58%, but also with recoil damage and with recoil, or Rocky Helmet damage and recoil. It's going to be taking a lot of damage itself. Then Lokix comes in, is going to be able to take the Trailblaze appropriately. Does try to get off a kill here with Tera Bug First Impression, but unfortunately with that defense boost and Tauros Blaze being able to resist, I think it's 4 times, but with Tinted Lens it was only be 2 times resist. Does die to a Raging Bull. Typhlosion Hisui comes out, is able to take a Wild Charge and then kill Torpedo's Blaze with a Shadow Ball. Finally, we see Dunsparce come out, in which Vespiquen decides to come out to Toxic it as Dunsparce, trying to go for a Coil Sweep here, and gets a Body Slam Paralysis on Vespiquen, but Vespiquen is able to Toxic it. Very fortunate for the Vespiquen. We do see a Earthquake Prediction on the Sonoran Pikachus, but it does end up failing as Vespiquen does throw Venoshock, which doesn't even seem to be doing much damage at all to this Dunsparce. Dunsparce going off for a Roost, Vespiquen getting paralyzed, doesn't really matter. We are going to see a switch out into Cerulege here as Vespiquen goes for another Venoshock. Again, Dunsparce coming back out, doubling to hopefully catch a prediction on the Vespiquen switching out, but we actually just see Dunsparce going hard, coming right back in, and then we see another switch into Enamorus as Vespiquen goes for another Toxic. Very good prediction for the Las Vegas Corviknights. We are going to see the Enamorus Tera Fairy, and then of course go for a Calm Mind as we see Typhlosion Hisui come out for the Vespiquen slot. And Typhlosion Hisui is going to go for an Infernal Parade, but it is going to die to an Earth Power to the Enamorus. We are going to see Arboliva come out, does take a Draining Kiss, as Enamorus does gain back a lot of HP, but Arboliva does go for an Earth Power. Following turn, we do see a Protect from the Arboliva to get off more toxic damage as Enamorus goes for a Mystical Fire. I need a drink of water. Sorry, guys. We're gonna switch. Sorry, my throat just like dried up so much that like I just like breathed in and like did not breathe out. Like I had a mini panic attack there. But oh man, these videos are so long to talk through. But this Enamorus is gonna go for another Mystical Fire as Quaquaval takes another takes the Mystical Fire on the switch in away from Arboliva. But does get the Enamorus to die to Toxic, which is really important. So Cerulege comes out to take on the Quaquaval. I don't know if it was a speed tie here or not. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But Cerulege going for Flame Charge is actually really important because it does, I think, maybe after +1 does allow it to outspeed Iron Valiant. Which I think you would want it to be slower anyway. Maybe no, because then you can just kill it with 2 Bitter Blades versus it 2 KOing you. So this Flame Charge set actually really mattered, because with Quirk Drive Booster Energy I thought the Shadow Ball would have killed, but Cerulege actually has decent special defense of like at least 100 with 75 HP, so it actually lives a Shadow Ball, which is pretty insane to me. And then the Bitter Blade coming out, keeping it a decent amount of HP. Then it's going to have to 1v1 the Vespiquen, but with Bitter Blade it should be a little bit straightforward. Even though Vespiquen does try to get out of Toxic, it does unfortunately miss, and Cerulege is going to be able to pick off the Vespiquen and the Arboliva the following turn with Bitter Blade. Wow, who would have thought Cerulege being actually good? But yeah, it put in work. And that's going to be a clean 4-0 for the Sonoran Pikachus. Again, let's get into the review of the game. Feel free to skip if you'd like. Of course. Turn 1, very good scout for Las Vegas to make sure that the Paldea and Tauros wasn't faster than it, as well as the Intimidate is very, very annoying. I think by turn 3, once I saw that this was Rocky Helmet, it's also important to note that based off your Quackball damage with Wave Crash, you should know that this is defensive by now. Meaning that you should know that your Lokix does not kill it at this HP. But again, as I previously said before, instead of going Lokix here, Typhlosion Hisui is also kind of like a decent soft check to Tauros Paldea Blaze, which I don't even think you died to a combination of Trailblaze and no. It would be, you take the Trailblaze, then it's Wild Charge, you probably get it off a Shadow Ball, maybe you kill, maybe you don't. But ultimately, like, Typhlosion Hisui isn't as important as Lokix, because effectively, like, once this thing is gone, you are free to U-turn on whatever. So I definitely think Typhlosion Hisui is a way better softer check. Even though, like, you know, you take a lot of damage, but you're probably doing enough damage back where then this Tauros Paldea Blaze is not a problem in the future. So yeah, instead of sacking the Lokix here, which is very unfortunate, which is very, you know, does a lot of damage to the enemy team. Typhlosion Hisui could have came out, and we can see here, like, you know, it takes at least 1 wild charge, 42%, like, it could have, and maybe could have taken a Trailblaze into 2 wild charges, especially with the recoil damage, it definitely could. As well as it's so low HP that it most likely could not take on future Lokix damage. So I do like the toxic play on the Dunsparce. I think that there was a turn here where if you see that Dunsparce is roosting here, I think this following turn you're kind of free to toxic, because basically you know you're guaranteed to win this 1v1. For you, honestly, for the Vespiquen, you just keep spamming toxic here because you know a switch is going to happen eventually. We do see Cerulege come out, Venoshock doing no damage. I also think in terms of the set, I don't know how potent Venoshock is, because even like on an Amorous T, Vespiquen is so bad, like special attack and attack, that it's probably not even worth running Venoshock for an Amorous T. I'm not entirely sure, but potentially there could have been better move options there. Yeah, none of this matters too much. Even sacking this is okay. I think it was kind of strange for Sonoran Pikachus not to just go for the Mystical Fire off the rip, instead going for the Draining Kiss. But, you know, it does allow them to live longer, I guess. Get a little bit more chip off. No, even less chip, right? Yeah, because they only take this 1 Draining Kiss. Interesting. Sacking the Quaquavel to Cerulege is okay, but the following turn, if you know that Iron Valiant does not kill this with the booster underneath Shadow Ball, it's definitely way better to go Vespiquen and at least get off the toxic damage, and then, you know, they Bitterblade you, you toxic them, they take a little bit of chip, you Bitterblade it again, and at least they're at 6%. Maybe then you go Arbolivia to protect, and then, I don't know, it could have made the differential a little bit closer. Then you could have killed it with Shadow Ball, and then potentially picked up maybe like 1 more KO. Still would have been a loss, unfortunately, but just a better idea. Also, for this Enamorous T play, in terms of instead of going for Earth Power here on the Tornado T, although I think you were predicting perhaps Cerulege to come out, I definitely think Leech Seed would have been better, and it would have been decent against Cerulege if it did end up switching in. And yeah, sorry, that was the only thing I missed, and that's pretty much game. So, yeah, very good sets from Sonoran Pikachus, and I think the biggest misplay were the low kicks, sacking the low kicks to the Tauros Paldea, as well as potentially just not bringing Iron Valiant in. Maybe it could have came in on Dunsparce, maybe? No, but risking the Body Slam is pretty bad. That Typhlosion Hisui would have been nice to have to take on Dunsparce as well, because you're immune to the Body Slam. But I think getting the Toxic off on Enamorous T, I think the Toxic strategy with Vespiquen worked really, really well. I just think the unfortunate sack to low kicks, as well as Typhlosion Hisui, or no, was it Quaquavel taking so much damage for the Tauros set? But I think that was just like set per set. But yeah, I think low kicks sticking around would have made this a lot closer, because it was able to U-turn more and do some more damage, and threaten things out basically. But yeah, that's going to be it for this match. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, next match we have the Kingston Kleavors against the Ottawa Donphans. The Kingston Kleavors has the team and the top roster, while the Ottawa Donphans have the team and the bottom roster. Let's get right into this battle. I'm going to see the Ali Dedenne on the Kleavor, as Kleavor doubles out into Kilowattrel. Is it going to be Volt Absorb? It is not. Dedenne going for Volt Switch, doing a clean 51%, is doing heavy amounts of damage. We see Rotom Frost coming out, wanting to go for another Volt Switch as Kleavor switch in, again taking over half, which is actually insane. Then we're going to see Dedenne come right back out to threaten to kill Kleavor exactly with another Volt Switch, actually doing crazy amounts of damage. Mimikyu finally coming out while Kilowattrel comes in. A switch from Mimikyu out into Donphans. Kilowattrel goes for a U-turn, trying to destroy its disguise, and then switches into Gallade. Gallade does go for a Leaf Blade, which with sharpness, I believe this looks to either be Choice Bandit or Expert Belt, but with sharpness that does hefty damage. So Dedenne is going to go for a Nuzzle, while the Gallade continues to go for a Leaf Blade and actually going to take out Dedenne as well. Mimikyu does decide to go out. We see a switch from Gallade into Kilowattrel as Mimikyu goes for a Trailblaze. Does get the speed boost, but goes for another Trailblaze the following turn. Does not take it out as Kilowattrel U-turns to break the disguise, and Toxapex is going to come out. Now we're going to see a Tera Steel from Mimikyu here as it goes for Woodhammer, only doing 20% to the Toxapex, while it does have Rocky Helmet. Toxapex is unable to get off a Toxic. We then see a switch from Mimikyu into Vaporeon as Toxapex goes for a Haze. Vaporeon throwing out a Yawn, Toxapex throwing out a Toxic. But we are going to see a switch from Toxapex back out into Gallade as it takes a Chilling Water. And then we are going to see Vaporeon switch out of here into Rotom Frost and take a knockoff, doing 50% from that Gallade. Heavy damage. Kilowattrel comes out but takes a Volt Switch that is able to take it out, and now we see King Gambit coming out as Thwackey decides to come in. We are going to see King Gambit actually switch out into Mimikyu as Thwackey goes for a U-turn, and then we are going to see Gallade come out for the Thwackey side, while Mimikyu decides to try to go, pick off Gallade with the Shadow Sneak, but unfortunately it does not kill, and then we see Gallade kill Mimikyu with a Sacred Sword. Now we see Rotom Frost come in, going to go for a Shadow Ball to pick off the Gallade. But of course, Hawlucha is now going to come in, and with Grassy Seed activating the Unburden boost, it is able to 2-hit KO Vaporeon with a close combat. And from this point, basically, it's going to close combat again, kill the Vaporeon, close combat again to take out Rotom Frost. Because Rotom Frost does not have a Scarf anymore. Yeah, especially since Hawlucha had Unburden, I don't think it even mattered. King Gambit is last, and even to prevent the Sucker Punch damage, Hawlucha actually switches out. Yeah, Katao Cleave doing 58% to Toxapex is insane. But only taking 18% from Surf is not bad either. But yeah, Rocky Helmet Chip is going to whittle that thing down. We can see that the Sucker Punch from the King Gambit is not going to be able to do enough, and the close combat is going to take out King Gambit in the end. So a decent 2-0 victory for the Kingston Kleavors. Now we're going to shift focus into the review of the game, so feel free to skip if you'd like, but let's get right into it. So I have a lot of notes for this game. Yeah, okay, so off the rip, I think Ottawa having like all this Volt Switch momentum early on is insanely huge. I mean, immediately getting 50% off on Kilowattrel, 50% off on Kleavor. I think particularly for Kingston Kleavors, if they know that they can't take the Volt Switch, like they don't have Volt Absorb, I think potentially their best play is simply to Stone Axe or maybe even U-turn. Because like you won't die from full. But also, like, you know, just switching out into Kilowattrel, you just take free damage there. If you know that Kilowattrel is not switching, so. And then, like, another Volt Switch on the Kleavor. I think, like, all of this is super fire. Sorry, is this too loud? Seems a little loud for me. Sorry. We're going to see this Volt Switch take out Kleavor, which is, like, really good. But I think the huge misplay here is Ottawa Donphans is getting off, like, such crazy momentum with just Volt Switching and getting off a tons of damage, right? Already killed a Kleavor, 50% to Kilowattrel. Why would you, like, kind of butcher that momentum by going Mimikyu? Because Toxapex is always on your opponent's team. It can switch in anytime it wants on the Mimikyu. Here, the Kilowattrel is basically trying to U-turn to break the sub, and then it's going to go straight into Toxapex. So I feel like whenever you're, like, obviously showing that, you know, with Volt Switches you're doing heavy amounts of damage, why would you quit doing that? Because like you know, Dedenne just came out, killed that thing with a Volt Switch, why not go back into Rotom Frost and threaten something with a Volt Switch again, especially since your Choice Scarf, like you're hitting everything. Like even Kilowattrel might come out thinking that it outspeeds you, and then you can just Volt Switch and kill it. If it's Thwackey, you can even threaten with a Blizzard, or you can simply Volt Switch again and then go back into, you could even go like Kingambit there, for example, and then you resist most of Thwackey's attacks, and then you can try to get off some chip, or even double again to catch the Toxapex and go back into one of your electric types. Or if you want, you could go on Thwackey and just throw off a Blizzard, see how much damage it does. It should at least do half, because Thwackey is not good, especially defensively, and you'll at least live one hit from Thwackey, if Thwackey is what you're worried about, because essentially Thwackey needs to stay around for Grassy Seed stuff, for Hawlucha. So they definitely want to keep it alive. More than likely you'd probably Volt Switch on the Thwackey, but who knows. But yeah, I definitely think bringing in Mimikyu here is definitely not a great play, because it's just like, you know, Toxapex being here, you know, it's just gives your like, you put on so much early pressure, it just like definitely gives your opponent like a lot of breathing room, basically. I do like the Kilowattrel coming in to U-turn to break the skies and then go into Toxapex the following turn. I like Ottawa did make this safer play of going Donphan, hopefully predicting like a Volt Switch here. But yeah, U-turn is a lot better because they do have a ground type, but as well as it does preserve the disguise on Mimikyu. So I don't think it's a bad play here. Gallade, I'm pretty sure based off this damage as well as like the future damage of like knockoff doing to Rotom, this I'm pretty sure is choice banded. Winston, please hush your mouth. I'm pretty sure that this looks to be like choice banded, so knowing that this is choice banded, you could go Kingambit here and deal some pretty decent damage. I'm like almost 100% this is choice banded. I didn't check the calc on Rotom Frost. But yeah, you resist the Leaf Blade, as well as like you threaten it out, and then I would honestly double to one of the electric types to catch the Toxapex and then Volt Switch again, and just keep up with the Volt Switch shenanigans, as well as like, you know, once Donphan is dead here, sorry, you would go Kingambit here. Even Dedenne here, Nuzzle is not bad, but also I think like you'd be fine also just getting off the Volt Switch damage, because Dedenne is pretty decently fast. I don't know if it's Scarf. It's got a decent matchup into Gallade. I mean, you showed here that you outsped it. Even going just straight up for Dazzling Gleam here for damage would have been pretty powerful. Gallade does have decent special defense, so it will live one, but effectively it puts it in range where Rotom Frost can then come out and then freely Volt Switch on like whatever. I'm almost certain that a combination of Dazzling Gleam with Rotom Frost Volt Switch should be able to kill this, especially since yeah, like you definitely know at this point that Dedenne is going to be faster than Gallade, because that damage with Leaf Blade, it had to be either Extra Belt or Choice Band. So you could freely Dazzling Gleam here, and then go into Volt Switch to, or go Rotom Frost to go for a Volt Switch, and then you can freely Volt Switch the entire game. Like, you know, you really can at any point, but like, you know, Gallade could at least take one. Now I'm pretty sure like most of these guys really can't take one, and Thwackey cannot take a Blizzard. So it's going to be a lot of predicting on the Kingston and Kleavors side. But yeah, getting off this Leaf Blade here, pretty powerful. Again, going Mimikyu here is fine, but realistically you should have gone for Play Rough here. Again, I talked about this last week, I don't like this Trailblaze set, especially since, you know, Toxapex is in the back, it can always wall your Mimikyu. There's really no point for you to go for speed boosts of like any kind. Maybe Swords Dance you could get away with, because then you're doing like extra damage against Toxapex, and then it could be like somewhat useful. But like realistically here, you should never be going for Trailblaze, because like, I mean, in this scenario, like, it's okay, but I'm almost certain that if you just went for Play Rough here, especially if you did enough damage, you kill it the following turn with Shadow Sneak. Again, I think also I wrote down as a play for Kingston Kleavors, for Kingston Kleavors, a safer play would have just honestly been to go straight up Toxapex. Like, you already have Haze. And you can try to Toxic it, even though the disguise isn't up. You can keep hazing through the disguise, even if it tries to Swords Dance, and you have Rocky Helmet, you definitely have recovery. you can whittle this thing down pretty easily. But yeah. After, also I said after this Dedenne kill here, potentially predicting the Toxapex switch in, honestly going Rotom Frost here for Ottawa Donphans would have been a pretty amazing and aggressive play because you can catch something with another Volt Switch essentially. But yeah, this Trailblaze, and then again, like Trailblazing twice. I don't know what your final move is. I know it's Trailblaze, Shadow Sneak, Woodhammer. I didn't look at is Woodhammer specifically for something? So even then, like Woodhammer, if we look at Kingston Kleavors roster, Woodhammer does not hit anything specifically for super effective damage, meaning you're definitely running Play Rough, you definitely need to run Shadow Claw, and then if you really want Trailblaze, that's fine, but you definitely need Shadow Claw. If it was me, I probably would have ran Play Rough, Shadow Claw, Shadow Sneak, and then Swords Dance, but Woodhammer is not like a great coverage move here because nothing gets hit with it for super effective damage on their team, especially their entire roster. But yeah, U-turn, Play Rough would have been a way better play here because then you just actually knock out the Kilowattrel. Going for another Trailblaze there is again useless because Toxapex is in the back. And we see here, you know, Woodhammer is going to be doing no damage. It'd be way better to even have like Swords Dance into Shadow Claw to at least do some like decent damage. It's probably doing like 40-45% max, especially since it's more than likely defensive Toxapex. Again here, for Ottawa Donphans as well, going Vaporeon is a very passive play because you have no way of dealing with Toxapex. I definitely think going straight up into Rotom Frost, knowing that your opponent's never going to Toxic you, basically gives you a free Volt Switch off and can do a lot of damage to Toxapex. And again, it allows you to start putting pressure on your opponent rather than your opponent toxicking you and whittling down your Vaporeon. I also thought turn 14 here after this Volt Switch and then go Kingambit. I think honestly a decent play would be to potentially go Toxapex here. Although Toxapex could be extremely useful for Mimikyu potentially, but at this time I didn't think that you had a water type move until like the very end, but also like I guess it makes sense not to go Toxapex here because Surf is only doing 18%, but yeah, so maybe not going Toxapex here makes sense. But then like you were gonna Thwacky U-turn, so I'm interested in what would have happened there. Potentially going hard into Hawlucha to try to get off the close combat, especially since this is Terra Steel now. Yeah, actually I get it. You always U-turn here. I would have even, personally, if it was me here, I already set up the grassy terrain. For Kingston Kleavors, you honestly can go hard Hawlucha, right? And then at least pick off Mimikyu. Your Unburden's broken, but like, now that Rotom Frost has lost his Choice Scarf, you really don't need the Unburden. So you at least kill Mimikyu here, and then you keep Gallade alive. Gallade could be like somewhat good for Vaporeon, because it can't kill you with Chilling Water, and more than likely you kill it with a Leaf Blade. At least 2. But you know, this Gallade thing works out, but also for Ottawa Donphans, if you had Play Rough, definitely should have gone for Play Rough to kill Gallade there. Turn 16. Yeah, that's blah 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 blah. Yeah, also here for Ottawa Donphans, considering that Hawlucha kills everything, you know, 2-hit KOs everything with close combat here, it would have been way better to actually sack the Rotom Frost and then go Vaporeon to try to get off some Surf damage, like additional Surf damage, especially after the minus special defense drop, and then allow Kingambit with Supreme Overlord in the end to have like +5 and then be able to Sucker Punch, actually kill Hawlucha with Sucker Punch. And then potentially, I mean, you were doing like 54% to Toxapex. More than likely you're doing a decent chunk to Thwacky too. I don't think you would have won the game, but at least it would have been a lot closer, especially if you had Swords Dance and predicted the Swords Dance on the Switch would have been actually nasty. And I think low-key you would have won the game. Because like you sack the Rotom, assuming that Hawlucha stays in on the Vaporeon, you spam, oh yeah, you're not Surf, you're Chilling Water. Chilling Water might not do enough, to be honest. But I mean, they have to close combat again, so I mean, again, they're like -5. And then potentially you could force them out because they have to switch, otherwise... I don't know, do they have to switch here? It depends on their talk spec set. I can't tell off of my head here because, like, Belushi definitely dies here to Sucker Punch. But, like, if Kingambit Swords Dance here would have been game? I don't think so, because Thwackey would outspeed, right? Let's see. Katal, Cleave doing 50. Okay, so if it's Swords Dance, it kills the Toxapex. 18%. Huh, very interesting. I don't think it could have killed the Thwackey because it had to be Eviolite. I don't think this was a misplay. I think switching there was the best play for Kingston. Could have been crazy scary if, like, Ottawa Donphans just said fuck it and then Swords danced up. But, yeah, ultimately they do end up losing 2-0. It was still a pretty close match, but definitely for the Ottawa Donphans, major things to note is, you know, you had a lot of really, really great momentum between these Volt Switchers early on. I think going Mimikyu was a bit passive. Instead of going right back into those Volt Switchers, like, you know, these guys are doing a lot of damage. There's no reason not to bring them out. I think also not getting the Dazzling Gleam off on Glade was okay, but basically it means that, like, you know, you couldn't freely bring out Rotom Frost to take out Glade because it at least lives 2. So having that Dazzling Gleam would have been nice. Like, even if they doubled out into Toxapex, you just will switch the following turn. Yeah, I think the Mimikyu set, I highly recommend changing up the Trailblaze set. I definitely don't think it's working at this point, especially in this matchup when they did have Toxapex. Mimikyu would have been way better to have Swords Dance, potentially just Shadow Claw just to get off the damage on Toxapex and then switch out. Or just, like, even hard switch out into one of your electric types to Volt Switch on it. Because Mimikyu in this matchup, as long as Toxapex is alive, is pretty much close to being a dead bond. Maybe if it had Swords Dance Shadow Claw, it could do some decent damage. But especially with, like, just Trailblaze Woodhammer, it's not doing enough. But yeah, besides that, those are, like, the major misplays. Everything else was fine. So yeah, sorry, I don't mean to be too critical. Again, it's nothing personal. It's just, like, the early game of, like, this felt like it was so heavily in your favor, and then by the end of the game it felt like all the momentum was gone. I was definitely rooting for you, Ottawa Donphans. That's why I wanted you to win. No disrespect, Kingston, but yeah, let's move on to the next game. Alright, everyone, finally, before we get into the standings, we have the Jacksonville Jigglypuffs in the top right with the following roster against the Wailing Wailords with the roster in the bottom right. But after this battle and the review, we will be going into the Kalos standings and talking about playoffs a little bit, so make sure you stay tuned for that. So, starting off, Jacksonville Jigglypuffs brought Scizor, Talonflame, Jolteon, Articuno, Azumarill, and Garchomp, while Wailing Wailords decided to bring Skeledirge, Muckalolin, Altaria, Raichu, Chansey, and Great Tusk. So the lead is Chansey into Talonflame. Immediately, Talonflame's going to go for a Flare Blitz, do a decent chunk of damage as well as get a burn off on Chansey, but 32%, definitely looking like max defense Eviolite Chansey is able to 1v1 the Talonflame, as well as it is able to get up Stealth Rocks on the Jacksonville Jigglypuff side of the field. And we even see that Chansey is bringing Icy Wind for the Garchomp, getting some decent chip of like 13%. Also takes only 30% from this Garchomp, which is actually pretty strong. Maybe it's Tank Chomp, I'm not exactly sure on this calc, but definitely Icy Wind. I think Chansey actually lost like a lot of moves coming into this recent generation, so I think it doesn't have Toxic anymore. Maybe Seismic Toss is probably better than Icy Wind, but also, like, I guess you don't want to get the rough skin damage. It's pretty niche tech, but yeah, I mean, I guess it's decent chip, but yeah, like only 13% with a ×4 to Garchomp is a little bit rough. We are going to see some soft boileds here. Effectively, Jacksonville Jigglypuffs could continue to Earthquake to threaten out all the recovers are soft boileds because they're not taking that much, but they do decide to switch into Scizor on the next Icy Wind as Chansey decides to soft boiled up and Brick breaks, and then we're going to see Chansey the following turn actually go for a flamethrower, do a decent 45% chance to Scizor, and then Scizor falls back with a brick break. And yes, that Chansey outsped that Scizor, which is insane. Altaria coming out, obviously threatening Scizor with a flamethrower. Articuno actually comes in, but it is going to take the rocks damage. Altaria is actually going to set up Rain Dance. Articuno going for Ice Beam actually doesn't kill Altaria from full, which is insane. Altaria actually getting up a Tailwind too, and Skeledirge coming out on the Ice Beam. We are going to see the following turn Skeledirge go for Tera Water and then go for Tera Blast. Even in the rain, however, it does not take out Articuno, as Articuno goes for a U-turn. It will die on rocks though. Interesting to note, but it could be a good sack in the future. We are going to see Jolteon come out, obviously, to do a lot of damage with a Volt Switch or Thunderbolt, since Skeledirge is now Water type. We are going to see Great Tusk come in for that immunity, and then the following turn we are going to see actually another prediction of the Jacksonville Jigglypuffs to for the Wailing Wailords to switch out, but they did not switch out, meaning that Jolteon is going to have to take a knockoff to the face. Luckily it wasn't an Earthquake. It is going to knock off their choice specs, and actually the following turn Jolteon is going to Terry Fairy and actually just knock out Great Tusk there. Pretty crazy. Raichu is going to come out wanting more likely to go for a fake out to get off that little bit of chip damage. We are going to see Garchomp come out, but this Raichu actually has another check and Play Rough, doing a decent bit of chip, 35%. We are going to see Garchomp slight over prediction, maybe predicting Altaria, still not bad. Going for Dragon Claw here does a good chunk. We are taking a little bit more damage, but ultimately it doesn't matter. We are going to see a switch from Garchomp into Scizor as Raichu actually goes for Wish here, following that up with a Thunder Punch into Paralysis on the Scizor, meaning that Scizor is not going to be able to get off any damage. The following turn it does go for Bullet Punch right before it dies, but Raichu is going to take it out with a Play Rough. Next we're going to see Talonflame come out, obviously threaten out this Raichu. We are going to see Skeledirge come in as Talonflame goes for a Flare Blitz. As well as Talonflame goes for a U-turn, getting off that little bit rested chip and actually sacking Jolteon to the Stealth Rocks, so Skeledirge doesn't die to anything. Skeledirge unfortunately does go for a Yawn here, meaning Azumarill when it comes out here, Skeledirge will stay in and die to a Play Rough from the Azumarill. You're going to see Raichu come back out. Garchomp coming in on the Raichu to get that rough skin damage on the fake out. Unfortunately Raichu does miss a Play Rough, which would have taken out Garchomp. But yeah, just unfortunate that Garchomp is able to get that kill. Muck-Alolan comes out, but it does have an Air Balloon, meaning Garchomp does have to go for a Dragon Claw, meaning Muck-Alolan can get off an Ice Punch and take out Garchomp. But we are going to see Talonflame basically come out here with a Flare Blitz, take out the Alolan Muck, as well as Altaria coming right back out, Talonflame taking it out with a Brave Bird as well. So we are going to move on to the notes of this battle. Even just watching that for the second time, I kind of have some more notes here. Yeah, all this early plays is really totally fine. It's even good to scout. Like Talonflame normally can do a lot of damage to Chansey, so it's totally fine to go for a Flare Blitz here. The burn is a little bit unfortunate for the Wailing Wailords, but that's totally fine. I do think well, we'll talk about it as we get there. This was funny to see Icy Wind on Chansey. I think it does technically work as long as you don't want to take the damage from Seismic Toss, but ultimately Seismic Toss is not a bad move to have. I guess you will take the rough skin damage, so I'll let you figure out whether you really wanted Icy Wind or not. But yeah, also another play by Jacksonville Jigglypuffs here is to actually continuously EQ to take out the Soft Boil, but maybe also you want to keep your Garchomp like relatively healthy, specifically for Raichu or Muck-Alolan, so I do understand switching here the following turn in the Scizor, especially since you have Brick Break. I also think I mean, between Talonflame, Articuno, and Scizor, someone has to have Defog, so something that I did say here is that if Scizor has Defog, definitely should go for it, because the rocks are pretty damaging to your team, considering that Articuno is not heavy-duty boots. Talonflame is, but yeah, definitely Articuno taking 50%. Coming into rocks is definitely rough. But Chansey actually going down to a Brick Break this following turn was definitely a misplay by Wailing Wailords. Definitely once you see Brick Break on Scizor, that kind of gives you an immediate direction of like, I don't have to sack my Chansey here, because if my opponent does get rid of rocks later, I can always set them back up, hopefully, as well as I can soft boil it up on stuff. Also, for some reason, you're faster with Chansey than Scizor, which is also good, meaning you could soft boil up on them in the future. But Scizors is actually just a great switch in here because you resist the bug and steel type moves as well as you're immune to the brick break. So it's really, really good for that. And then you can follow it up by going for a torch song. So yeah, second Chansey here, definitely not the play because it still has its uses. Even going for flamethrower here is like okay, but like ultimately this chip is not worth it for Chansey. It's definitely like better to have it soft boiled up later on something and potentially get off like a little bit more chip overall, or at least keep up the rocks. Like you don't have to sack Chansey there. Altaria coming in is also fine here. Like you even could have went from like Chansey into Altaria to threaten with the flamethrower. The switch here is totally fine and understandable from Scizors because Altaria can run flamethrower. Rain Dance, very interesting. Surprised this Ice Beam didn't kill Articuno. Also, I think going for a Roost here is fine with Articuno if you do have it, but maybe this one's offensive. We are going to see Scizors come in. I do think this early Tera Water is kind of weird from Wailing Wailords, just because specifically you don't have to go for it. It is really good overall, so maybe just getting it in earlier is better, but also like it does threaten in like Jolteon early versus like you can wait to do it on like something on Garchomp. Like right now, Articuno potentially, like if it had Freeze Dry, also could hit you for super effective damage. So it's not great to be water here. I can't tell based off the damage if this is Scarf or whatever, or sorry, Scarf or Specs or whatever, or if it's defensive. But yeah, definitely Tera Water is not needed here because obviously even with your Tera Blast, you're not killing this thing, and it's much better to go for a Torch Song where you can get a +1 boost. And again, for Altaria here, you are gonna die to Stealth Rock, so if you do have a risk, you should definitely go for it. Even in the rain, maybe with Torch Song, like you might be able to live it, but maybe it's just nice to get a free U-turn and bring in Jolteon to threaten this thing out. This is totally fine. I think the major misplay here was after the knockoff with Great Tusk, you have to understand what Tera types your opponent can bring, and of course Tera Fairy Jolteon. You know, Great Tusk has really bad special defense, so obviously it's going to die to this, and it's definitely something you have to scout for. More than likely you could have gone potentially Muckalolan here on the Tera Blast, and then at least killed it the following turn. Obviously it might even Volt Switch out, but potentially you could go like Muckalolan and then double into Raichu on the Volt Switch to catch your Lightning Rod, and then threaten it out with a Fake Out. And then that's actually a fire play because when you threaten it with a Fake Out, it also dies to rocks. So if it even switches out here at all, like it's dead. So yeah, unfortunate sack by the Great Tusk. Turn 17 here. The reason why Jacksonville Jigglypuffs, instead of going for this kill, I think was more than likely trying to keep Garchomp around for the Muckalolan. I think that was their main use for it. And then finally, turn 21 was probably the biggest misplay of Wailing Wailords. On this U-turn, when you have Scizors come out, you always need to go for Slack Off here because you're so low health. Like after taking this Flare Blitz, when you're below half like this, especially like you have to expect that they're going to deal some more damage. This is just like a decent rule of thumb of like anytime that you can recover and go back up to full, you should. Because even if like they double Brave Bird there, you would still die because you didn't go for recover. So slack off, or sorry, not recover, slack off here is essential. I honestly think if you like slack off spammed here, you might have just 1v1 considering that Jolteon dies to rocks. Garchomp is pretty low. Talonflame is decently low. You only have to worry about a Azumarill, but you also have Unaware for a Belly Drum, so it's really not that big of a deal. But potentially just like with Skeledirge being able to wall out like at least 2 of these 3 Pokemon, you can use the rest of your Pokemon to take out potentially a Azumarill or Talonflame. Maybe you would want to take on Garchomp, but yeah, like potentially you could go like sack Altaria, like keep this thing healthy, kill like whenever Garchomp comes out, switch into like sack Altaria and then use Muckalolan to take on Garchomp, and try going from there. But definitely keeping Skeledirge alive is essential to win out this game, because when you do die to the player off here, these 3 guys cannot take on this last little bit of the squad. Do you think this play rough was a bit unfortunate? They wouldn't have died, but then of course Talonflame comes in and revenge kills this, and Muckalolan I don't think wants to take one from full. Like you can't switch out, but maybe you sack Raichu and then you go Muckalolan. Trying to think here. I think it could have been the miss on the play rough could have made this game a lot closer, because I think Muckalolan can at least get off some decent damage on Talonflame, but depending on if it's Roost, they could potentially Roost stall, try to get the Flame Body proc. And actually, Talonflame realistically only has to get off like a decent amount of Brave Bird damage on Muckalolan before Azumarill can just come out with. It looked like it might be Choice Band, since it's definitely not Belly Drum because you have Unaware Skeledirge. More than likely, Choice Band Play Rough does a decent enough damage to Muckalolan, and also it can pick off a Tera in the end too. So Play Rough miss there, could have made it a closer match, but ultimately, overall, the misplays on Wailing Wailords that cost them was not keeping Skeledirge healthy because obviously it can wool these physical attackers in the end, and then the accidental sack to Great Tusk because of the Tera Fairy Jolteon. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this battle. We are going to move on to the standings now. So let's get into it. Obviously, we can see this is still week 5, so we have week 6 and we have week 7 left. But looking at the divisions, just basically how it will work is the number 1 team in the divisions will get a bye week for playoffs, meaning they're basically essentially already in the semifinals, right? Because these 2 team fights, then these 2. So 2 and 3 will fight for each of these divisions. Like 2 will face 3, 2 will face 3, and then whoever wins that will face 1, and then whoever wins this division will face this division, and they will become championship. That's basically how playoffs work. There are a couple teams in here like Marble Falls, obviously. I mean, Sonoran Pikachu is like definitely within these past 2 weeks. Like if they end up losing, someone could rise. Santa Cruz or Los Angeles Pelippers could end up rising to the number 1 seed, which is really good because you definitely want to buy. Of course, this plus differential is really hard to deal with because Sonoran has had so many 6-0s. But also for people that are like, you know, still very much close to getting any playoffs, like 2 and 3 from Mojave Cacturnes, 2 and 3 for Pittsburgh coming in here. Definitely going to be a close one. But again, for these last 2 weeks, even if like you're, say, a team on the lower end, that does not mean that you should give up whatsoever, because you can still basically affect someone else's chances of getting to playoffs. And you definitely want to make the teams that want to go to playoffs, like, make it worth, like, basically, like, don't make their road to playoffs easy, as well as, like, you want to improve your overall record anyway. And also, I think that basically you have really nothing left, like, else to lose, because, like, you're not really fighting for playoffs, but basically you're fighting to mess up someone's opportunity as well as increase your record. So yeah, you shouldn't make it easy for them at all. But yeah, that's basically it for the playoffs. We'll probably do like one more of this for, I guess, week 6, week 7. I'll try to make them short, to just say like what's going on. But yeah, I think without further ado, that is going to be, oh, I forgot these little teams are in the way, but I hope you guys, yeah, you guys can still see the things. Okay, cool. But yeah, without further ado, I'm gonna get the heck out of here. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more PBO content, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.